Great scientists. Great scientists are persevering and never deterred by difficulties. Michael Faraday is regarded as one of the most distinguished scientists and inventors of modern times, and his work on electricity is still a subject of study in the form of Faraday's laws. But few know his inspirational life story, which is all about courage and fighting against the odds. Michael Faraday was born into a poverty stricken family in a dirty London suburb. He suffered from a speech defect as a child. He would pronounce rabbit as wabbit. He could not even say his own name and would call himself Faraday. Other children laughed at him, and teachers did not help him either. When he was 12, his mother was forced to take him out of school, thus putting an end to his formal education. At 13, however, he started working with a bookbinder, binding hundreds of books during the day and staying up all night to read them. Reading thus became his obsession. One day he came across a book on electricity which had been sent to his master for binding. He started reading it and was completely hooked. That was his first introduction to the subject of electricity, which soon became a lifelong fascination. Faraday was still poor at 21. Once a friend gave him a free ticket to a public lecture and demonstration by the renowned chemist Humphrey Davy at London's Royal Institution. Davy's work on chemicals and electrical lighting was the subject of conversation among the scientists of that age. 70 years later, across the Atlantic Ocean in the USA, the same work enabled Thomas Edison to produce the first consistent light bulb. That day in 1812, Faraday was spellbound by Davy's lecture. He kept taking notes about the mysterious force of electric fluid. He was so engrossed in the lecture that he forgot to applaud with the rest of the crowd. When he went back, his notes were so comprehensive that he bound them into a book, meaning to gift it to Davy someday. Faraday decided that day that he didn't just want to sell books, he wanted to be a great scientist, good enough to write his own books. Davy became his role model. But there was a problem. He did not have the social status, money, or the education to pursue science. Faraday thought it would be wonderful if Davy became his mentor. But Davy did not agree initially. Faraday was not dejected, he just kept trying. Destiny had a strange plan in store for him. A few years later, a chemical explosion happened inside Davy's lab, and he was temporarily blinded. He now needed an assistant with an excellent memory to help him. He was reminded of Faraday and decided to hire him as his secretary. Davy never believed Faraday could do anything in the field of science going by his social status and education. He therefore dismissed Faraday's aspiration and advised him to stick to bookbinding. But Faraday was relentless. He worked day and night and learnt as much as he could about Davy's experiments. Soon Faraday became indispensable to Davy and was promoted to his lab assistant. This was his first step towards a scientific career. Though much of his job now was cleaning labs, at least he got to see some of Davy's leading experiments. Even then, Davy did not have much hope for Faraday. Then Faraday got another chance to prove himself. One day, Davy tried to recreate a famous electromagnetism experiment with fellow chemist William Wollaston, exploring why, when an electric current is applied to a wire, it causes that wire to behave like a magnet. Obviously, the forces were connected, but nobody had figured out how to make it happen continuously. Davy believed that if he could find out why it happened and controlled it, there could be many practical ap- applications of the force. But he was unable to figure it and was frustrated. He then teased Faraday, asking him to try his hand at it after he was done cleaning the lab. Within a few days, Faraday solved the problem. In fact, he went further, and the result was the first induction motor, which converted electrical current into continuous mechanical motion. The induction motor spurred a revolution. Fans, air conditioning, sewing machines, photographs, power tools, cars, and even trains and aeroplane engines grew out of this simple device, which was born out of the mockery directed at Faraday. Faraday became a celebrity scientist overnight. Nobody now cared about his social status or education. This young man had just created a revolution. One day, think as a teacher. One would think as a teacher, Davy was happy at his pupil's achievement. But in reality, he was jealous. People started telling Davy that all of his discoveries, the best was Faraday himself. This made him even more jealous. An angry Davy gave Faraday an impossible task to keep him out of his way. He handed him a piece of Bavarian glass which was used in lenses in telescope and microscopes and asked him to reverse engineer it. Bavarian glass was manufactured by a secret complicated process, and Davy knew that with the equipment available in the lab, Faraday would never be able to accomplish the task. This piece of glass became a significant thing in his life.